I am Luis Alberto, and I make every defender score. This is Lazio Lounge.
At the Olimpico, early on in this Serie A season, it's Immobile! Superb penalty! Sends the Olimpico wild. Lazio in front against the new money of Milan. I think you'd have to say after the initial opening 10 minutes of the game, they've deserved it. They've been the better side. They've looked the more dangerous.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile. We're going to talk about Lazio-Fiorentina and the latest Europe League match and the latest injury, unfortunately. I'm not alone. I'm with Alistair McKenzie. Hello Alistair, how are you?
Hello, yeah. Well, a bit frustrated. I think possibly the advantage of us actually recording the show an hour after full time is that most of the initial emotion has passed, which is only a good thing probably. But yeah, very, very kind of frustrating end into the game, obviously, which I'm sure we'll get onto.
And I'm happy to have back on the show Federico Farcomeni. Hello Federico, how are you?
Hi Vittorio, hi Ali, hi everyone. Yeah, as well, very frustrated, so I agree completely with Ali.
I don't understand why.
If it was like this is a kind of 606 like BBC, it would have been, after final whistle, then, we will be pouring in all the rage and everything else, but at least we had 1 hour to cool off.
Well, that was kind of like our Rome Derby episode was a bit like that. Yeah, it's annoying, isn't it? Not only because it's so late in the game, but obviously the manner in which it's happened with the VAR, which is something that still frustrates me so much, just because of the inconsistency of it, and what everyone seems to have been pointing out on social media and so on after this game is that Marco Parolo's penalty claim in the first half was ignored. So for me, that's more annoying than anything, really.
But I haven't seen a single Fiorentina player asking to get the penalty. To be honest, I don't know if you have seen them, but I haven't seen a single Fiorentina player who was asking the referee to go and check the VAR. I haven't seen him.
No,
I haven't seen one.
Neither did I. And Alistair, it's perfect. Why they didn't see or didn't ask the VAR for what happened to Parolo in the first half? That's the problem. Because still, I don't believe the one of Casado was penalty. But the referee saw it again and for an incredible reason said it was penalty. But the episode of Parolo in the first half, that was even worse. And again, no VAR. So this is the biggest issue I find, that the VAR should be called. Every team should have like 2 challenges, like in tennis. You have 2. Yeah. If you win it, you have it back. Otherwise, you lose and you have just 1. And when you lose all the 2, then it's you to blame. You made the wrong decision.
It makes sense.
Yeah, I think you have to take the control away from the referees, because it's so clear that the referees in Serie A are still adjusting to this, and they don't have any sort of guidelines, or so it would seem, in terms of when they should be making these calls and when they should be going to have a look at incidents. Because, like you say, if it's an appeal system, then it's managed by the clubs themselves, which makes a lot more sense. At the moment, I don't really understand what the referees are supposed to do other than just listen to what their assistants tell them. But it's crazy for them to be able to have 2 incidents like this in one game and look at one and ignore the other.
Yeah, and the biggest problem is that if they believe that the mistake is not huge, then they don't alert the referee. So maybe in the first, or if the referee is sure of his decision, he doesn't ask the VAR. So, you take already away a lot of things. And it already happened. We just have the first, 3-4 months of Serie A, and there are a lot of episodes about this. So I think it's time for talking and find a solution, because like this, it's useful, but it's not that much. It's still not changing the matches like today. So Uh, I think they'll have to sit down and find something to change, I believe.
Yeah, and like people, the one thing you'll always hear is that you don't want the game to be slowed down too much, which I think we'll all agree with. But I think giving an appeal system like tennis, like you mentioned, introducing that wouldn't slow the game down, because if you only have 2 challenges to make during the game, then you're not gonna rush into making an appeal for an inconsequential foul. It will be just these big moments. So I think that as an argument is a bit flawed.
And the other thing is, for example, today the penalty was given in extra time, and the game was stopped for at least 1 minute, if not more. That extra time wasn't added,
No, I think it was. But he gave 2 extra minutes. He gave 3 and he gave 2 more.
Yeah, but they didn't pretty much play because there were other 3 fouls, and
exactly. So. Yeah. So there are, as you say, there are other ways to stop the game anyway from flowing and all that. I think if this in the long term proves to be like turning point to improve the system and make sure it's less and less mistake prone, then be it. Obviously, it's bad because it's been against us. But if it's a way to make it better, then okay, it's fine. But it's obviously very, very frustrated because for all the reasons you're saying.
One thing very important, I think we have to point out tonight is that yes, Lazio's not playing very well, but then we look Napoli, we look at the top team. You win the Scudetto, winning even these matches 1-0, struggling maybe for 50 minutes, but taking home the 3 points. So we're going to talk obviously about Lazio performance, etc. But then we see Napoli winning 1-0, playing bad, and winning thanks to a penalty. So this episode makes the difference, especially if you want to compete for the Scudetto. How many times do we hear winning ugly is the difference that make a team win the Scudetto from another one who arrives second or third? Don't know if you agree on that.
Well, of course. I mean, you need to be able to pick up results, and no matter how you're playing. And I think that's one thing for me that's been a bit concerning after the international break is, look, we can talk about VAR and the referees and so on, but the fact is we wouldn't be talking about this if Lazio had a 2 or 3 goal lead in this game, which they, arguably should have against what's quite a poor Fiorentina side. But since the international break, Lazio haven't been playing in the same kind of fluid way that they were before. And obviously the Rome derby defeat was a hard one to take, but we talked last week about the fact that Lazio just weren't playing like themselves. It's not the same kind of performance. Against Vitesse, obviously, there was a lot of turnover and it was essentially a B team there, but that's still another disappointing result. And then tonight it was just so scrappy. I mean, that was the thing that frustrated me the most, was watching. It was quite an ugly game to watch. There's a lot of talent in that team, but they're not really connecting as well as they were before the international break. And it's quite hard to put your finger on any reason for that, really.
I agree. I think we lost momentum, and international break, it was definitely key for that. But also tonight, I mean, on Thursday I was in Liverpool for the Everton v Atalanta game, so I just watched highlights from Lazio v Vitesse, and as you probably know more than that about me, but about the game. But from what I've seen, highlights from what I heard, what I read, I thought, Lazio actually didn't really play bad in that game. It looked like a decent performance considering like a B or probably a C team. So I thought, they're on their way back, after losing the derby. But in fact, today they were so afraid, especially in the second half, to drop points that you could sense, that they didn't really have that confidence to pour forward and win the game. But officially with 5 minutes left on the clock, I checked the stats from Sky Sport, and they said goal scoring opportunities. Lazio had 7, Fiorentina had 3, which tells most of the story of the game. Because Fiorentina in the second half they had more possession and everything else, but in fact they didn't really create any proper danger to Strakosha, apart from before. I think it was before the penalty that overhead kick from Pizzella. I think it was a great save from Strakosha. But that apart from that, I didn't really see anything else. And we also had another big chance with Parolo himself. So I think as you say, if we had won, it would have been key for our confidence to pick up again and gain that momentum going forward. But in fact, with this result, is even worse. It's even more difficult to find that momentum we had before the international break. Very hard.
I agree with Walid Mohammed, who's asking our question on Twitter, saying, is it time for Inzaghi for a new formation, as now it's a little bit exposed by now? I think there's something true. People are aware now how Lazio play, especially because without Felipe Anderson, without Nani, etc., they already know that Lazio will play with Ciro Immobile and Luis Alberto behind. And so they're adapting their team to this. And Ciro Immobile is less free to move. People know how Luis Alberto will play. I got the impression that every time that Ciro Immobile had the ball today, he had at least 2 men marking him. And it was really difficult for him to have a chance.
I think in terms of, from my perspective anyway, in terms of the kind of the way the team's played after the international break, Immobile has been the most worrying one for me in terms of his downturn in form. It might be a bit harsh to say that after just 2 games, but he just doesn't look as sharp. Tonight the ball was bouncing off him, his first touch wasn't great. And given the form he was in before the international break, I do kind of wonder how much that, obviously the kind of emotional trauma of what happened to Italy in the World Cup playoff must be hard to recover from, but also the fact that he was having some kind of minor injury problems around that time as well. I kind of wonder if there's still a problem there, which is being ignored. And if so, it's obviously worrying because we're so dependent on him to score the goals. But obviously, if there is any sort of fitness problem, then you don't want it to be aggravated in any way. I mean, you saw tonight what happens if Immobile is not around. We have Caicedo, who's a guy who came on for 3 minutes and managed to give away a penalty. So I don't know. I'm kind of concerned about Ciro because once he stops playing, Lazio stop playing, and I think that's become pretty evident in the last couple of Serie A matches.
Yeah, that's true. Honestly, I didn't like it, except when he probably in the first half he had great timing when he was waiting for a story, and then he turned at the very last second, and then he gained a good free kick from just outside the box. But that was probably it. That was probably the only moment when I thought, Ciro is probably can do better than this. But it's true. He hasn't been his former self, and in fact, I don't know if he's still recovering from the Italy heartbreak or not even in the games against Sweden. Yes, he tried something, but he wasn't really his former self. So I think, this bloody international break has done so many damages, and we still have to recover from that.
I think it would be interesting to see how many balls he touched inside the box, because I believe that's one of the reasons.
Sure.
He hasn't got any more that space. Defenders are double marking him, so I don't remember seeing Ciro Immobile with the ball inside the Fiorentina box tonight. So that could be a reason. And Luis Alberto is great. Simply, it's the difference maker, but he's playing far behind Ciro Immobile. So often Ciro is all alone with all the defense. So maybe it's time to try and play with someone near Ciro Immobile, if possible, with Luis Alberto behind, because I believe Lazio like that will struggle to score.
I think in terms of talking about, the original comment there in terms of Inzaghi maybe needing to change things up, it's quite hard to say with the current state of the squad exactly what he could change. I mean, yes, he's played the same team tonight and he's made the same substitutions basically. So that, from that perspective, it is quite predictable. But now that you've got Nani out injured, Felipe Anderson still isn't fit, and the standard of attacking players beyond that is pretty low in terms of Palombi and Caicedo, then there's not an awful lot he can do. So I think he's probably right to stick with a team he knows can get the job done. I don't think he really has the tools available to him at the moment unless the one thing I would perhaps like to see more would be towards the start of the season we saw Milinkovic-Savic playing in a more advanced role, and say if it was a kind of 3-4-2-1 system with Milinkovic-Savic and Alberto quite close together behind Immobile. I think that would perhaps be a bit more threatening than Milinkovic-Savic, slightly further back on the pitch. So I don't know. I mean, it's from what he's done so far this season. It's impossible to really criticise Inzaghi, but it's going to get to a stage that happens with any coach, is that once you stop getting the results, people will start to question you.
We got a question from Adi on our Spreaker channel. Serie A always manages to catch up to a player on form. Immobile always played best when given space, and now teams are figuring out how to stop him. He needs to up his game and become more dynamic in his threats. Federico, do you agree?
Possibly yes, but I think we don't have to take away the context of this game from everything we say. In terms of today it was a game. Normally in Italian we would say spada or fioretto, sword or foil, and Lazio today tried to play with foil rather than sword, and Fiorentina was offering you let's play sword, and Lazio didn't want to, and that's in my, because I've seen in the first half you could see 4v4 situations all the time. It was for Fiorentina, the three strikers and four offensive players against Lazio defenders, and they did well. I think De Vrij and Bastos were excellent, but in terms of midfield, going forward, I couldn't see anyone. Parolo was very confused in the first half, and whereas it was completely changed in the second half, perhaps because Inzaghi or somebody else told him to step up and play, because they needed him to do well. But in the first half, I think it was confused because of the intensity, because of the aggressiveness of the opponents. So possibly, if I think about it, then it's the only thing from tonight's game is not. I wouldn't want Inzaghi to change system, but rather see different spirit or bring somebody else, because Lazio tried to play with touches and back heels and and finesse and everything else, but probably they needed more grit tonight, and I didn't I wouldn't know from who I should want to see that grit from, except from the players who took the field. But in fact, it was a different choice from them, in terms of strategy, in terms of attitude, and that's, for me, that's a bit worrying going forward.
I think, just in terms of the kind of context of this result as well, I think it's worth mentioning that I said before, when we had our Rome Derby preview show, I was talking about the fact that this is a really crucial stage of the season for Lazio, building up to Christmas, New Year, in terms of the fixtures we've got. And I think this really does need to be turned around as soon as possible, because you've got big opportunity missed tonight. There's Roma dropping points. Below us, you've seen Sampdoria and Milan dropping points as well. So you've got to take advantage of the slip-ups of the teams around you, which they failed to do. And now it's not going to get any easier. It's Atalanta, Inter. There's a lot of big games coming up. So I think this I said it a couple of weeks ago, but I'll say it again. This is a stage of the season, a run of fixtures that could actually define, what the objective for the season is. It still has to be Champions League qualification. It was great being, competing for first place to begin with, but I think a top 4 finish has to be the objective. So it would be great for us to still be very close to that position come January, so that perhaps people can start putting a bit more pressure on Lotito and Tare to get in the market and strengthen the squad a bit.
That's true, Ali. Because after the game, if you look at the table, Sky normally gives you the progressive table during the game, and while Lazio were winning, they were even on points with Juve and Roma, 31 points. But then obviously when you see the actual table at the end of the game and you see Lazio 29 and Roma 31, Juve 31, you think, well, this is it. This is probably the moment you've lost it. You probably lost the that part of the table. Feels like it's gone. In fact, it isn't gone, because it's just 2 points. But you feel like, as you say, this is like key moments during the season, and this is one of them. Personally, I haven't felt robbed like this since, I don't know, 15 years. A game against Milan when we drew 1-1, and they drew at the very last second. But that's that's a very bad feeling, and players will be, feeling the same, I think. And, that's why it's increasingly difficult. And as you say, the game also against Vitesse could have been, a chance to pick up momentum. And again, this game as well is the same.
Yeah, there are some quotes from players and Simone Inzaghi talking about this. They all say that the penalty given at the end was concerning. They didn't see it, and there was a penalty on Parolo, so they felt that the referee did really bad today. And Tare at the end of the match came in to discuss with the referee in a bad mode. I can see him get disqualified for the next couple of weeks.
Gosh, it could be. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, Alistair, it's right. This is the key moment. You had, imagine winning the derby and winning today. Lazio talking about Scudetto, but like this. And it's funny because I'm feeling like Lazio lost. Instead, they draw, but drawing like this is like losing a match. Now the situation is completely different because the momentum probably is gone. The other teams feel like, Lazio had a very good start of the season, but that's it. And the injuries are not stopping. Nani will be out 3-4 weeks. Felipe Anderson is a mystery. He should have been back with the team last week, and now they're talking about end of December. So a lot of problems, and I don't know if the players look tired, but for sure they're not playing as a month ago, I would say.
No, and I think the one really frustrating thing as well is that we were looking at this thinking, injury-wise, we're actually in quite a good position. This is a Lazio team that was getting all these really good results while key players were out injured, and now we got to a stage where you've got Wallace, Basta, Caicedo, all these guys coming back to fitness, and then you lose a player like Nani for 4 weeks, which is hugely frustrating. Because I think something that's got to be crucial as soon as the form starts to dip a bit, it's crucial that you have these hungry players who have a point to prove, who are ready to come in, because and this is a Lazio squad that should have lots of those players. The likes of Alessandro Morgia will want to make a big impression, as will Caicedo and Nani, for example, when they get their chances. So the frustrating thing about that Vitesse game for me was more that the best player on the pitch again was Luis Alberto, but we know what he can do. So when you're looking at guys like Jordan Lukaku, who's not had chances to start many games this season, You want to see him really making an impression in these games when he gets his opportunities. Same with Nani, and I think they failed to do that against Vitesse. Obviously, the chemistry of that team's not going to be the same because it's quite an unfamiliar one. But you've still got Palombi being given a chance up front, and he got an absolutely golden opportunity which he missed. Lukaku didn't have nearly the same impact that he often has off the bench. So that was quite a disappointing aspect of Thursday, I think, was that these kind of hungry players, I didn't really see the performance that you'd like to see.
I believe watching Nani playing on Thursday that the biggest problem for him is that with this 3-5-1-1, he's not able to play with Luis Alberto. The two players are in a certain way similar. They both want the ball on the feet, and Nani needs to touch the ball more. And at the moment, it's Luis Alberto, the playmaker of the team. So for Nani, it's very difficult to find a position because Luis Alberto is playing much more in his role. So it's not very easy for him. And I believe it's not a coincidence that the best match of Nani is when he enter in place of Luis Alberto. Think about Juventus, think about Benevento, and so on. I believe that's one of the reasons why Nani is not playing that well. And Palombi, for me, he didn't play that bad. The problem is, if the team is not working, then they don't give you enough balls. And he pretty much had 2 chances on Thursday, and on one, the keeper did an incredible save. So the thing is he ready to be the alternative of Immobile? I don't think so, especially if you want to compete for the Champions League. But at the moment, it's him and Caicedo. And again, I see Caicedo playing very well near Immobile, but not replacing Immobile as a striker.
Yeah, it's true. It should be a completely different game. I was watching tonight, for instance, Giovanni Simeone. That's what Pioli perhaps asked him to do. But I think I see Caicedo more like a Joe Simeone kind of striker. To be honest, he can't be Immobile. So it's too difficult to change the team around him. It's rather he needs probably to adapt to a bit more, and that's a shame, because if you think about the game against Vitesse in the Netherlands in the first leg, or other games, he seemed to be performing well from the bench and do his job, and but now it's crazy to think that it's the same team. They feel like they don't have the motivation to do stuff, and Caicedo is exactly the same.
Man of the match of tonight?
Man of the match. I think sounds a bit obvious because he scored the goal, but I think Stefan de Vrij had a good game. I think the defence generally did quite well. I mean, we got opened up a fair few times on the counter-attack, but like Federico was saying earlier, restricted their chances. Strakosha had a few saves to make, but most are kind of speculative ones from distance that you're not too worried about. So yeah, probably I'd say Stefan de Vrij scored a great header, did well defensively. And it should have had a clean sheet as well, obviously. So that's a bit disappointing.
One thing that came on my mind watching the match is one thing De Vrij have grown a lot is, if you remember the first match against Milan, and in the first season in particular, when he had to play against a speedy striker, he was struggling because the guy was able to run past him. Now he improved in that. He's able to use his body to avoid this type of thing. I think De Vrij has grown a lot, and probably playing with a 3-man defense helping, because he's not he's playing like a sweeper. That probably is his best role.
Possibly, yes. Anyway, I agree completely on man of the match. It would have been, even more man of the match if if we had won. But it was just the most consistent throughout the whole game, because as I said before, like Parole, I think he had a pretty good second half, but the first half was very shocking in terms what you expect from him, and whereas De Vrij still kept his composure and consistency in terms of performance. So it's him. Shame is not man of the match for the whole game, but just for the Lazio side of things.
Do you believe the performance of Parolo are one of the reasons why Lazio is not playing like before?
I think that's a bit harsh.
Maybe, yeah.
I wouldn't say that Parolo has underperformed any more than anyone else in the team, to be honest. I think that the main issue seems to be that there's such a reliance on Alberto to be the one who creates, and we talked about how Immobile's getting restricted space perhaps in recent games, and when you've got that midfield, I think Milinkovic-Savic, if anything, has been more disappointing than Parolo in recent games, because he's a guy you should really be looking to step up and be more of a creative force. And I haven't really seen that in the last couple of games. Alberto's being relied on as the provider. He was a provider again today. He was a provider against Vitesse. And I think that's more worrying, really, is just over-dependence on one player. But Parolo's still doing what he always does, I think. He should have scored with that header, if I'm honest. But it's still a fantastic run and a really good jump to meet it. So, he's done well to create the opportunity, even if he should have scored. But I still think Marco Parolo's a good player.
He is a good player, but if if we did what you said at the beginning, which is Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto behind Immobile, which seems very logical in my view as well. But do you think Lucas Leiva and Parolo, provide enough cover for them too? Because that's my doubt. Because Parolo is great in both phases, although sometimes he blacks out for some reason. But I don't know if him and Lucas Leiva are the cover you want for Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto, and as well for the defense.
I think this is where Basta coming back into the team is going to be quite important, though, because at the start of the season, Basta, he's a lot more solid defensively than Marasic is. So I think probably more capable of having that solid defensive shape if you have a guy like Basta in the team, because when you're defending, then you can have Parolo sitting there beside Lucas. And if he's going forward, you still have Lucas protecting, and Basta can almost drop back to kind of form a back four off the ball, with Radu pushing out to left back. So I think there's still, with Basta in that team, quite a solid defensive shape that you can make. And Marisic's defending has been something that's concerned me most of the season. I think you saw that again today. He got forward a lot, but there are big gaps behind him, and Fiorentina kind of pouring down the left wing a few times. I think Basta is another guy who's a bit underrated, and him coming back from injury, I think, is actually a really good positive thing at a difficult time.
Two things. Parolo is the one that keeps the balance in midfield, because he's able to do the two phases. So that's why I'm saying his performance could tell you a little bit more the story of Lazio performance. And I said it already a couple of weeks ago, I think. Milinkovic-Savic is, in the last month or so, is more trying to do the trick, the incredible skill, than to kill the match, score and finish it there. At least this is the impression I'm having. He's having more fun to show how good he is than to help Lazio winning the matches, which is a little bit concerning, because him, Luis Alberto, Immobile are the talented player that should help Lazio win and not, do tricks. Otherwise, we had Kishna already, that is a freestyler and not a football player. So,
yeah.
I agree with you saying that Savic did not deliver as we expected, and all the pressure is on Alberto. But say that Savic and Alberto behind Immobile, we cannot play like that. We need Savic's strength and size in the midfield. He's physical. He makes a difference there. Huh?
Yeah, it's a good point, but at the same time, it's quite useful having him in those attacking positions because it means you can go long, which you've seen Lazio do today, actually, because he's about the only player at that end of the field who can actually win the ball in the air. So, I mean, it's very nice to obviously create moves where you're keeping the ball on the ground, going from one end to the other. But if you're wanting to mix up the way you play, there's enough people with good range of passing and defence that actually being able to ping a long ball up towards them and turn defence into attack immediately is quite a useful, quite useful weapon to have. And I think him being in an advanced midfield position doesn't mean that you lose his strength in midfield necessarily, because he's still a midfielder, just an attacking midfielder. Not talking about playing him in the forward line. So I don't know. I think it's worked before, and it could work again. But yeah, certainly, we don't have many players in this team in that end of the pitch who are capable of winning the ball in the air. So he's very useful in that regard.
What's your thought about Lucas Leiva? Because today I thought he struggled a lot, especially in the first 15 minutes or so. He couldn't handle very well Chiesa. And then you see that Fiorentina was pressing him very high, and Lazio was struggling to move the ball. Already his ball skill are not amazing, but even under pressure he struggled. And I believe this was probably the first time where I saw Leiva struggling even in the defense phase, at least for the first 15 minutes. Then things got better. But, I talked very well about Lucas Leiva and how he was helping the rest of the team. Today, I thought things were a little bit different.
Well, again, in terms of stats, I can see total passes from Lucas Leiva 61, which is the most in the team, and passing accuracy 82%, which is just behind De Vrij. So, I agree with you, because my first impression as well, from what you expect from Lucas Leiva, it was, so Fiorentina is taking a game to you, giving more, aggression, camping up in your own half. So you expect this player to recover more balls and, to break up play a bit more and to do something more. But possibly our expectations are too high. I don't know. Or we expect something different from him. And possibly, I'm wrong as well in terms of, what I expect from this kind of player, or what Inzaghi asks him to do, in every game, in this game in particular. So I don't know, but in terms of general impression, I agree, because I would expect a different proposition and performance from him.
I mean, do you think there's an argument to take Lucas out of the team for games perhaps when you want to be more aggressive, more attacking? I think particularly at the stage when your more attacking players aren't delivering, it might be interesting to, I don't know, perhaps change that up a bit. I think Lucas is absolutely crucial in games where Lazio are going to be playing on the back foot. Like his performance against Juventus was absolutely brilliant. But Fiorentina aren't a small team, but in games, say, against your Beneventos and your Spal and so on, then perhaps there's not so much need for him to be in the side.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see more Murgia, honestly. I understand it's not very easy for him and for Inzaghi to find him space. But especially with a midfield that is struggling like today, struggling is not right. They didn't play that bad, but they weren't playing as well as usual. Maybe Murja can make a little bit of difference. Uh, I don't know if you would play him instead of Lucas Leiva or Parolo, etc. But I think he can bring something different to the table.
Yeah, to the game. But again, about Lucas Leiva again, still checking his stats. I'm surprised to see total aerial duels 8. That's the most in the team, and I don't expect him to go high for the ball. 75% of aerial duels won, which is pretty good percentage behind the Fry, which we had one and he won the single one, but Lucas Leiva had 8 of them, which is something I would never expect from him. And in terms of other total duels, Milinkovic-Savic had 20, Lucas Leiva had 16, just behind him. So we probably undervaluing his performance, but as you say, Murja might actually bring different proposition, but if you have to check if either Murja and Leiva or Parolo and Murja. I wouldn't say take Milinkovic-Savic off. Of course, I'm not mad, but Inzaghi obviously needs to, I don't know, shake things up a bit, because possibly, as you say, Murja also in terms of grit and passion. It could be a good wake up call in this very moment.
Yeah, maybe it's what Milinkovic is too confident. Is not feeling the pressure. He said he feels it's his job, and so I wouldn't bench him, but that could be a way to shaking up him a little bit and prove to the rest of the squad, hey, everybody has to prove
they deserve their starting place. Yeah, so it's also
I don't know, or maybe as you said before, changing the position of Milinkovic-Savic and put him near Simone Inzaghi, maybe Immobile. I wish, yeah. I don't know. I think Lazio need to shuffle a little bit things there, because people know how Lazio playing, and this make me think how much Felipe Anderson out is hurting this team, because they cannot change that much in front.
Well, this is a problem in terms of talking about shaking it up, is that there isn't, like I mentioned before, there isn't an awful lot Inzaghi can do personnel-wise to shake things up. I think the one thing I'd like to see is more of Lukaku. I mean, because there's so much he can offer from an attacking perspective, and whenever he plays, he seems to be one of the most advanced players on the pitch. But the best we've seen from him has been off the bench. I'd like to see him starting ahead of Lulic. And, even if that does happen, Lulic's form hasn't been great, obviously, which is something we've talked about in depth on here. But Lulic is also capable of playing in that midfield three. And like you're suggesting there, you don't want any players feeling too comfortable. And I think most of that team, really, apart from the wing-backs and perhaps Bastos, everyone in that team is probably pretty secure in their position until we get Felipe Anderson back, get Nani back. There's not an awful lot that can be done. But I've been a bit disappointed by Marasic in terms of his kind of attacking threat. I think towards the start of the season, you could see when him and Lukaku are playing what a danger that is to have two such attack-minded wing-backs. And I do kind of wonder if Marasic, perhaps because he was so clearly more of an attacking player than a defensive player, if he's being kind of warned to be more switched on defensively. And I kind of wonder if that has happened, if it's kind of had an impact on his natural attacking instincts. He does still get forward a lot, but I don't think he's quite as brave on the ball, perhaps, as he was towards the start of the season.
Federico?
Yeah, I'm a bit lost because I was still checking Lucas Leiva stats, which is a bit crazy. But it's I don't know. It's just crazy. Oh, possibly I was thinking, did we actually face teams who proved to be so crap? Because I actually was checking other teams' results from today, and I saw Nice lost 5-0 at home against Lyon, or yesterday Sassuolo lost 2-1 at home against Verona. So I don't know. Is it us, or was it the other teams which were too bad, and we actually we were actually shining because other teams were bad? I don't know. Possibly not. But it's just. I'm thinking, why did we actually lose that particular momentum, that particular spirit? What Simone Inzaghi can do to bring it back? It's a really, really tough job. But before the run of good results, we also drew against Spal 0-0, and it was a frustrating result as well. So we can't say they've been here before, but. Somehow they need to think, what happened, and kind of reformulate and see what follow next opposition brings, because the same Sampdoria, which is our next opponent next Sunday, they lost in Bologna yesterday, and it seemed after they beat Juventus 3-2, it seemed like oh no, they're on the way into Europe, the fantastic team, what the results, Gianpaolo is a professor, but then suddenly they lose 3-0 in Bologna, and everything starts from back to square one. So
and Bologna were in 10 men for all the second half.
Also,
yeah.
So this says a lot about the level of this league, in terms of possibly this league improving, and level improving of other teams as well, which is beneficial for the Italian league. I think Juventus have they were being held as well against Crotone, but they just scored and they're winning 1-0 now. So it's it proves we are improved. Everyone is kind of improving somehow, apart from, I don't know, Benevento. I don't know. We'll see tomorrow. But at the same time, Lazio need to, look at the bigger picture, obviously, but at the same time, do something to recover. And now they have a full week to do it, which is good. It proved to be good last season somehow in most of the times. So hopefully this is the case again.
Just to pick up on that, mentioning Sampdoria, that this game is huge. I don't think we can underestimate how big a game that is. Because obviously their result against Bologna, I think, surprised a lot of people, but their home form has been incredible. This is going to be a really, really difficult game, and on top of that, if you look at the table, it could actually kind of alter things quite significantly. Because if the top four all win next week and we get beaten by Sampdoria, we're suddenly locked in a kind of Europa League race with Sampdoria, and everyone else is kind of pulled away from us. I think if everyone else wins, they'd be 5 points clear. So it's because it's Sampdoria, perhaps it's not getting the kind of build up that you get for a Lazio Inter, a Lazio Napoli game. But I think this match next weekend is as crucial, really, as it's playing any of the big teams.
No, it's fundamental. Absolutely. Adi is asking, what about Pedro Neto? He's bound to feature this season, so I'm wondering where would he potentially play in the future. He's a right wing. He's 17 years old, so he's really, really young. But in Portugal, they were talking about the new Cristiano Ronaldo, and Barcelona, Manchester United were after him. So there's big interest in him. I don't know if he can play. Inzaghi yesterday was saying that he's just getting into it. He's learning the language. He's training with the first squad, but he has to learn things. Don't know. I don't believe he's gonna play a lot.
No, I think it's unlikely we're going to see him really because I would have thought that the opportunity he would have would be in the Europa League group games, and if he's not going to get in the team for Vitesse, then I don't see where he is going to get in the team. Also, you mentioned there that he plays as a winger. Obviously, we don't have a system that uses wingers, so unless you're trying to kind of put him in a number 10 role or something, then there isn't really a space in the team for him. And that's also a very, very competitive part of the team, the most competitive part of the squad. So I find it unlikely that we're really going to see much from him this season. But like you say, he's 17. Give him time. What were you doing when you were 17? I probably wasn't playing Serie A football.
No, I did the year afterwards.
He was on the bench, but he was on the bench today, right? He was on the bench.
He was on the bench, and
Yeah.
Inzaghi said, with all these injuries of Nani, Felipe Anderson, etc., he will be called and be on the bench. But he's not sure he's going to have a lot of play time. But he did really, really well again with his national team when he has been called. I mean, the talent is there. It's even thinking, is it worth it to risk him now instead of giving, a couple of months to settle, understand Italian football, and then play as his maximum level? I'm really interested to see this guy. And I remember a friendly match they played 1 month ago, something like that. He was really, really astonishing. But, it was like against a not professional team, so that doesn't count that much. But this tells you a little bit how much Lazio is struggling in front. We thought that without Hurt, the problem for Lazio was in the defense. Instead, we are looking that it's the other way around. Lazio still haven't got a sub for Ciro Immobile and someone who can give a little bit of rest to Luis Alberto. I believe that's the biggest issue we're having.
Yeah, that's true. Who would expect that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. So they always find a way to surprise us somehow. I don't know why.
Yeah.
in terms of Sampdoria, big game. Last season it was similar because we had just lost the derby with all that, which happened in that game, and somehow they managed to strike back and win at Sampdoria, which was a great win in terms how the season eventually panned out. So hopefully this is the case again. Although it's very harsh to take because what happened today somehow is not really your fault. Somehow it's due to something you can't really control properly. So that's probably the most frustrating thing for players to accept. So let's hope they can strike back and think let's do things and the things we can control well.
Yeah, I hope that they will play next week with that thing in mind. They steal us the match tonight, so we're gonna prove that we are better than everything. I want to see the team playing like that because after the derby, I expected a reaction, and I didn't see it. Lazio didn't play bad, but I didn't see those eyes of the tiger,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So that's something that I wanted to see. And one thing we didn't mention, Chiesa, it's a very good player. I mean, I saw it today. I think he's better than his dad, and his dad was really good,
Vittorio, you need to save this for your Fiorentina podcast.
No, but this is to say, Lazio wasn't playing against Crotone. Fiorentina has two players that I would love to have at Lazio, that are Simeone and Chiesa, and not only because their dad played for Lazio, but because they're young and they're talented. So
yeah. It's good that none of them stepped up to take the penalty actually, because it would have been really bad insult to injury. But but yeah, because during the game, I was at the pub with other with the other Lazio fans, and they kept saying, we fed you when you were kids, we fed your dads, we fed your moms, and Pioli as well. We fed you as well and your family, so you have to behave. But yeah, as you say, although I was talking about Chiesa with other guys the other day, and they said, yeah, it's true, because I said, I can see his dad for probably for, I don't know, his shoulders, shirt number, the way he moves somehow. But in fact, when probably Enrico Chiesa was his age, I think he was already scoring loads of goals, which Federico isn't. But because he's a kind of different player, different kind of football. So possibly that's because expectations are a bit different in terms of goal scoring chances and everything else. But yeah, it was a bit strange to to see them on the pitch and Pioli on the bench, and Fiorentina playing in a green shirt. They could have played in purple. Why green? But yeah, I would save this for the Fiorentina podcast later.
Yeah, but this is to say that again, it wasn't Crotone. Fiorentina for me has very good players. And the fact that Lazio defense was, I think, great, tells you that
proves the story.
Yeah. So, but I didn't see the eye of the tiger, and after a derby, I was expecting something special. Milinkovic-Savic doing tricks, ball skills, etc. No, kill the match. Score the fourth goal, and then you start doing things like that, like a freestyle.
He was doing it on 0-0, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I was surprised from the attitude, but I thought maybe it's just me. Maybe it's
no. And he didn't do it only today. It's since October he started. So I don't know. Maybe Inzaghi need to talk to him.
I think. What can often happen though is if a player starts the season in such good form like he did, then you get enough credit in the bank that will actually mean people will overlook your drop in form for quite some time. So I think maybe I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we kind of seem to be getting to the stage where people perhaps are starting to question Milinkovic-Savic a little bit more. I don't know if it's overconfidence, but if it is overconfidence, then at this stage you gotta look yourself in the mirror and actually start taking it seriously again, because he can be such a he's a match winner really when he's on his game. So we need him back.
Yes, absolutely. And Luis Alberto a little bit hid these things with his performance, but now it's not enough, and especially against Sampdoria, who is not an amazing team. I would say it's at the level of Fiorentina. Has a couple of very good players, but have weaknesses. So I think a good Lazio can beat Sampdoria. I don't want to say easily, but 2-0, something like that. Yeah. So Lazio have to step up, start playing again. Well as before, more focused probably, more thinking about the 3 points and less about the show, and because it's time. Otherwise, the Champions League is gone. Inter winning, Roma drawing in that situation, Napoli winning, etc. Juventus that is winning now 2-0. So it could be late if you don't win next Sunday.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, at the end, do you think there are some faults of Simone Inzaghi as well? I was thinking today why Lukaku's not playing today. Lulic had fever yesterday, was doubtful to play, and instead he started. And after you see Lukaku, he didn't play very well against Vitesse. But give him a go, give him a chance.
I wonder if, because Inzaghi is, he is still an inexperienced coach, if that run-in with Lulic did rattle him a bit. When Lulic was so angry about being substituted. Now that whole thing got swept under the carpet very quickly. They said it was resolved, as soon as the game was finished. But I do wonder if Inzaghi thinks he's better off avoiding that kind of confrontation again, because you are talking about dropping your captain in order to get Lukaku into the team. And I think, that's he'll be happy with that for the Europa League games and so on. But if you start doing it for the big Serie A matches, then Lulic won't be very pleased with it. So,
don't think so. I mean, Inzaghi handled it very well, the Keita situation, for example, last year. So I don't think he struggled or has lack of confidence for managing Lulic. And a little parenthesis, I like really a lot what happened with the Lulic situation. I believe 1 year ago with Lazio, or 2 years ago without Peruzzi, this would have happened. Titles on the Corriere dello Sport. The locker is against the manager, etc., etc. Instead, this time Lazio handled it pretty well. Sorry, little diversion. But yeah, I don't think Inzaghi is scared about benching Lulic.
I don't know, because he's been doing it for the whole season, right? I mean, playing Lulic and then Lukaku coming in has been, one of the main points of the season. So, yeah, but at the same time, Lulic, because of that goal, he has acquired a kind of different aura, different level. So he feels like he can say whatever he wants. I think, in terms of status, in terms of perception, which is not really good. Is not really good because in terms of situation with Keita last season, supporters were happy because of his performances, but at the same time they knew he wanted to go. They knew they didn't really like his attitude in some games. When he had that moment with Biglia in Pescara and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Lulic is still in the eyes of supporters is like for that goal is still he got that aura. So possibly Inzaghi is not afraid to bench him, but he still overthinks if it's the case to bench him in some games because of that, because of the perception of supporters. I think.
Adi is joining, saying he believes Lulic is better than Lukaku. So you see, people see the other way, saying that Lulic is more important.
Well, I think Lulic, he deserves the benefit of the doubt because he's been a top performer for Lazio for many years now. So I don't think we're doubting that he's a good player. It's just that based on form, if you're going to give somebody a chance in that team, I think it's going to be Lukaku. And talking about mixing things up and trying to get a bit more kind of spark and fire back into the team, Lukaku's so direct and so fast and powerful. That yes, obviously he does have an impact as a substitute when defences are tired and so on. But I think you can still give him an opportunity to demonstrate that there's more to him than that because he hasn't really been given those chances on many occasions.
Yeah, it's true because you yourself you said against Vitesse he didn't really play that well, Lukaku. I think beginning of the program you said. So yeah, possibly as defense tire, it is the perfect tool to come in and they did it today. He did it once, but he did it. So possibly that's the reason. But if he wants to play more consistently, definitely he needs to add more consistency to his game. Not for just the last 30 minutes, but as you say, possibly distributing his pace throughout the 90 minutes. So that's where he needs to step up because he can't really do it forever. Like coming in the last 20-30 minutes and as a sub. Possibly he has the ambition to be a starting player at some point of his career, and so that's he needs to add something more to his game, and that's the moment to improve and keep doing it because otherwise everything will be lost. At some point, it's just possibly because of the system Inzaghi trusted Lulic more because, as you say, defensive gaps and everything else. Possibly he's more, tactical aware, and that's another reason. But many things to change in that respect, I think.
Thank you very much, Federico. I think it's time to wrap it up. It was a pleasure to have you again on board. Thanks even to Alistair, who unfortunately is always here.
Great sign up.
It wasn't for him. It wasn't for him. Podcast was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, let's close it here.
Thank you.
We talked a lot about the Lazio-Fiorentina. Let's hope to be a little bit more happier next Sunday after Sampdoria-Lazio. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, guys.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Have a nice week, both of you.
And you.
Yeah, I'll try.
And there it is. It's Lazio's moment.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. Remember, you can follow Lazio Lounge on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spreaker and YouTube. And always, Forza Lazio.
I'll tell you what, Lazio will be drinking copiously